Family. Today is Monday, April 16th, 2012, 1432, Moorish calendar. I'm Sharif Bey, chairman of Old Canaanite Temple, Moorish Holy Temple of Science, and Moorish Science Temple of America in Canaanland. And so today we're going to be discussing a couple of different things in the news media. Summit of the Americas. There's a piece on the charter, and we'll get into some other news items. But to start off, 5 on the left and 2 on the right, as we do, with feet and arms at a 45-degree angle. Allah, the Father of the universe, Mother and Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is our protector, our guide, and our salvation. By night and by day. He is in our holy prophet. Garvey. Amen. Ashe. Islam. Alright, so basically, in the news media, there's been a few different things going on. I mentioned the Summit of the Americas. So this is interesting, for a few reasons. One, when we talk about Drew Ali, we say that he went to the Pan American Conference in 28. So whatever happens to the Pan American Conference, this isn't it. In the Pan American Conference, that was like the only thing that the countries in the Americas did come together. So whatever is going on now is most likely fraud. And just to get into, or corporate anyway, right? Strictly corporate. So just to get into this article, I'll just read it out. Latin America splits with Canada, US on Cuba. Right? Summit. Allowing Cuba to participate may undercut democratic gains in the hemisphere, experts urge. There's the article. So it says, quote, Prime Minister Stephen Harper came to the Summit of the Americas with the goal of bolstering ties with the booming region, but left Sunday on a discordant note because of his government's stance on Cuba's participation. Canada and the United States stood alone in balking at an agreement to allow Cuba to attend future summits. That disagreement and a lack of consensus on backing Argentina's claim to the Falkland Islands scuppered a final declaration from the 31 participating nations. Even the summit host, Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos, declared it to be unacceptable that Cuba not attend the next meeting 3 years from now. Other major players such as Argentina and Brazil have echoed the sentiment. Harper emphasized that Canada has reached out to Cuba and does not agree with the American embargo of the country, but he said Canada is sticking with the summit principles that state that members must be democracy, an idea that originated under Liberal Prime Minister Jean Chrétien during the Quebec City Summit of 2001. Okay, so while we don't support the position of isolating Cuba, we do believe that the Summit of the Americas should be restricted to democratic countries and that Cuba should be encouraged to come as a democratic country in the future, ... And it's our contention that the Canadian policy is the way to get that kind of result, rather than the policy pursued by our American friends, Harper told reporters. What happens next is unclear. Santos said there would be a discussion of Cuba's participation at the summit 3 years from now, scheduled for Panama. Okay, and then it says under foreign policy, a little insert. The conservative government is trying to revitalize its 5-year-old America strategy, a policy of focused engagement in the region. Harper will fly to Santiago at the close of the summit for an official visit to Chile. But anyway, I want to go back to this part. This is a quote from Stephen Harper. Listen carefully. while we don't support the position of isolating Cuba, we do believe that the summit of the Americas should be restricted to democratic countries, okay? And that Cuba should be encouraged to come as a democratic country in the future. So he's saying come as a he didn't say change, become a democratic country. He didn't say, yo, because why would you say that? Nobody would say, like, people don't tell a person, especially not a prime minister, talking about another country, yeah, just change your political system and you can come next time. People don't say that stuff. He's saying just, get down with certain corporate policies and certain corporate image, and yeah, you can come. Like, that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. He's not saying, you can't be communist anymore, because otherwise he would have said something there. He didn't use the C word. He said, I'll say it again, I'll quote it again, and that Cuba should be encouraged to come as a democratic country in the future. And it's our contention that the Canadian policy is the way to get that kind of result, rather than the policy pursued by American friends. So, what are these policies and results that we're talking about? Right? So, it seems that his policy, right, or the Canadian policies, he's saying, is to come as a democratic country. So if you're coming as something, then you haven't changed, have you? You just put on I say, okay, I'm having a costume ball, I want you to come as a rabbit, and I want you to come as a pumpkin, and I want her to come as a chipmunk. So, you come as that. She comes, she's a chipmunk, he comes, he's got his ears, he's the rabbit. Because that's a quote. Right? That's a direct.
What paper was that?
In the 24, or today. Today's 24.
So Harper responded to Fidel's comments? Is that what that is?
No.
Remember when I was telling you about the other 24 when Castro had something to say?
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we're going right now.
Okay, so then in relation to what we're talking about with first of all, if anybody doesn't know about it, Cuba wasn't invited to the Summit of the Americas, the only country, right, in the hemisphere. So Cuba had Fidel Castro, former, president of Cuba, made some comments to the effect of, in response to that decision not to invite them.
So this is Castro Bashes Canada by Jessica Murphy, Parliamentary Bureau, Ottawa. Fidel Castro, Cuba's ailing former dictator, has written an article in which he blasts Canada and Prime Minister Stephen Harper. In an article published Sunday by a Cuban news agency, the 85-year-old calls out Harper and Canada for not taking sides in the thorny issue of the Falklands Islands dispute. Castro also takes issue with Canadian mining activities in Latin America. But he's not just critical of mining in the southern hemisphere. He singles out the Yankees, quote-unquote, for having, quote-unquote, forced Canada to extract bitumen, B-I-T-U-M-E-N, from Alberta's oil sands, causing irreparable damage to the environment of this beautiful and vast country. Castro also raised concerns over Canada's membership in the Organization of American States, noting Queen Elizabeth is our head of state and it's not clear whether Canada is a colony, a republic, or a monarchy. Castro did have kind words for brilliant and courageous late Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who visited Cuba in the 1970s. The Prime Minister's office had no comment on Castro's rambling rant. Castro also appeared to be smarting over the fact the communist state is excluded from the upcoming summit of the Americas in Colombia. In the meandering essay, he mocks the fact that US President Barack Obama could wear a guayabera, a men's shirt worn in Latin America that Cuba claims as its own, to the summit. The curious thing about this, dear readers, is that Cuba has been forbidden to attend that meeting, but not the guayaberas, Castro wrote. Who could hold back from laughing? Right now, some key things we have to point out. One, that Castro is talking about this beautiful and vast country. Right? He's from the Southlands. And he's saying that this is a beautiful, vast country. He didn't exclude himself, and he didn't exclude anybody else. Why? Because he's indigenous to this land. Right? He's not going to say that out of his mouth, I'm indigenous.
But if he wasn't,
he wouldn't be making that claim. Right?
So vast.
So vast. Right? Right? And don't forget that everybody's Moorish American.
Yeah.
That's why he said vast, because he's talking about the vast estate that the Prophet left for the Moors, that he knows about nationality and birthrights and all that. That's why they don't rep Fidel, because he's on birthrights. That's why they don't rep Hugo Chavez, because he's on birthrights. That's why they're not repping them, right? What else did he say? Queen Elizabeth is the head of state of Canada. This is according to, because this is now international law and governmental principles now. This isn't just, the United States 13 colonies and, the Queen and fighting over. Everybody is now involved now in the game. Because everybody was an ally to the U.S. Even Fidel. Right? And even Batista. You know what I mean? Fighting over their own birthright. Right? Set up as two agents to try to take out each other, to take over. But, Fidel had Che. So, you know what I mean? Crazy man.
Same way they had their own plan, he had his own plan. Right? He's like, just let me get control of this piece.
And then, and we also want to make mention to the summit. Right? Where was the summit taking place?
Colombia.
Right? The summit's in Colombia.
Right? Colombia.
Right? Colombia. Not the district of, right? Colombia. Right? And Cartagena is like the city that happened. Oh, so this is just some Cartagena history, right? And don't forget that we're talking about so-called, South Americans that are, like lighter skinned than us or whatever, and you know what I mean. Yeah. So they're not really part of our family because they don't look like us. How our people would think about them. You know what I mean? Like they're really the aliens that are, you know what I mean, trying to cross the border and you know what I said? When they're indigenous, like why can't they just move around? Like what's the problem? Like why try to force people to, you know what I mean? Right, to be in a corner. Right? So the ancient city of Cartagena was founded, as its name suggests, by the Carthaginians in the year 227 BC. Though then called Carthago Nova, New Carthage, it rapidly became their main trading port and at one time was widely recognized as being one of the wealthiest cities in the ancient world. Through Cartagena was made truly famous by Second Punic War 210-201 BC, which led to the landing of Hannibal and his elephants, who came with the intention of defeating the Romans. Hannibal's eventual defeat led to the loss of Spain, and the Carthaginians were expelled from Spain by 206 BC. Control of Cartagena thus passed over to the Romans, who made many improvements, roads, bridges, aqueducts, etc., to an already great city. After some initial teething troubles, Roman rule brought peace and prosperity for several centuries. During the decline of the empire, the Romans' power was handed over to the Visigoths, who settled in Spain to build a kingdom. Persistent conflict between Visigoth nobles weakened the monarchy, and in 711, the Moors, in brackets Arabs, arrived quickly, taking control of Cartagena and much of the peninsula. The city saw some demotion under Muslim rule, if only in terms of status. The Moors instead choosing the newly founded city of Murcia, M-U-R-S-I-Y-A, or M-U-R-C-I-A, as the region's capital, itself governing by the Caliphate of Cordoba. Much innovation followed, including the implementation of irrigation techniques still used today, converting the region's arid soil into fertile land. In the 11th century, brought civil strife, and the Caliphate was overthrown by native Spaniards to make way for the independent kingdom, including at its height part of the modern provinces of Alicante, A-L-I-C-A-N-T-E, and Almeria, A-L-M-E-R-I-A. In its last major change of hands, Cartagena and its surrounding territories were fought for and taken by Alfonso X. The expulsion of the Moors in several Cartagenas, Alfonso X expressed his desire and expectation of expelling the Moors from Spain with the help of God and the Virgin Mary of Castilla and Leon in the year 1243. Now governed from central Spain, Murcia remained the provincial capital and remains so today. Cartagena continued its strategic importance, being made Spain's official naval headquarters. It also remained the principal trading post for the country until the 20th century, when it suffered by competition brought on by rival ports of Barcelona, Valencia, and Malaga. And that's just to say, how many places do we know in the Americas that are named after somewhere on the continent? Right? Enough. Like enough. Yeah. How many places from over here are named over there? So, if it's one landmass, right, and it's one people, then automatically it's a republic. Like automatic. There's no, that's why Fidel said, we don't know what they are. Like, what are they? Are they a colony? Are they a republic? Or are they a monarchy? He didn't talk about are they a democracy. Because he knows that's fraud. Islam.
Didn't even consider it.
Right? Didn't even consider it.
And I would think that's the word trickery that they're using, right, to not have them at this summit.
In the summit. Right.
The summit now is renamed compared to what it was when Noble Drew Ali attended it.
Right. Exactly.
Now it's a whole different name.
It's a whole different jurisdiction.
Say these
just
are
like the UN.
Democratic corporate.
And then
that are in this.
That too. Look who did that. That was 2001. John Chrétien was the one who was hosting the summit when they brought that new ruling.
Right.
It was in Quebec City, 2001.
Right. and he's like high trilateral commission. It's like in the history of John Chrétien, like that's in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not like these mans weren't involved in our science.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Of course they were involved in our science. And we know that this is a republic.
Yeah.
That's a fact that this is a republic. And every one of the other states in the United States of America is a republic, including all the islands that we all say that, you know, we come from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As far as us in the north.
Yeah.
You know? Right? So that was good. Just so people could see that, you know what I mean? Like, we're not, when we tell people about, yeah, your birthrights and you're not Negro, black, color, people get take personal. Right? Yo, we're talking things that are happening right now. Like things that are happening right now in front of your eyes in the newspaper today.
Like the prophet said, keep an eye on them.
Keep an eye on the newspaper.
For real.
You know what I mean? Right?
And like I said, if you're in the knowledge, it's not hidden. If you're in the knowledge,
yo, it's blatant.
Plain and simple, right in front of your face.
So
like,
in your
you're
face.
like, how can not everybody see this? There's not a subliminal message. Said it straight, like didn't mix words.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Which leads us into Trayvon Martin, right? And certain things that are happening that's in the news, you know what I mean? And you know, it's just nothing.
Yeah.
To people, it's just nothing. Oh, it's just something in the news. Yeah. Right? When they're laying out everything that's going on. Like laying out everything. Showing you, right? So this is Sanford, Florida news. I don't know, website or what. The Florida judge overseeing the second-degree murder case involving Neighborhood Watch volunteer George Zimmerman says she may have a conflict of interest. Circuit Judge Jessica Rexidler, right? Like, I wonder what she is. You know what I mean? Right? Said Friday during a hearing in Sanford, Florida, that her husband worked with an attorney who referred Zimmerman to his current defense attorney, Mark O'Mara. It's my understanding that Zimmerman had contacted Mark Najami to represent him. Prior to you, Mr. O'Mara, as I have disclosed previously, my husband works with Mark Najami, said Rocksidler. The lawyer who made that referral, Mark Najami, is a well-known Orlando defense attorney who is serving as a CNN commentator on the case. That's not conflict of interest, right? But the other guys are conflict of interest, right? The judge asked O'Mara and prosecutors to file motions with their views on the possible conflict. My concern is this. I think that Mr. Najami is going to be extraordinarily active in how he both perceives and analyzes this case, said O'Mara. If you choose to file a motion to disqualify me as the judge, of course, Mr. O'Mara, you realize that has to be filed in writing for me to address it, said Rex Seidler. O'Mara told WFTV he will decide over the weekend and talk to Zimmerman whether to file a motion to have the judge disqualified. Prosecutors said Zimmerman fatally shot Martin in the chest during a confrontation on February 26. Zimmerman said he shot Martin in self-defense and has pleaded not guilty. His bond hearing is scheduled for April 20th and his arraignment is scheduled for May 29th. Okay? Now, where'd that happen already before? Right? And this is why Noble Drawley knew what he was talking about when he said that the forerunner is Marcus Garvey, because what Marcus Garvey was, people didn't really check what he was doing. They had their own idea of what he was doing. You know what I mean? Because just like he learned from the prophet, you don't trust anybody. Forget it. Like, you can't trust any of you guys, because all you guys are selling out. Right? You're gonna say something?
Just to say, like, yeah, like, people hear something about Marcus Garvey and somebody quote a source, but they don't ever go and read the source themselves.
Yeah.
So who knows if that person's even telling you a proper source, like, you know, or just putting their own opinion on it. So yeah, they should, when you get information, that research it yourself, you know, verify it, qualify it.
Right. So we're gonna go to the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey. We have to show this book, because if you don't have this book, then sorry. Like, yeah, like, you can't see this book. If you don't have this book, you should just be able to go to the shelf, pull this book off, just like you do with all the other Black history books, right? And don't forget that we're dealing with law, and that's what Garvey's connection to the Moorish movement really was. The fact that he was involved with all these cases against the same fraud democracy people, right, trying to tell him that he can't exercise his birthright and have a ship in order to transport goods from where he is in the Americas over to the continent. Matter of fact, have a fleet of ships to do that. No different than anybody else that China's doing, that Germany's doing, that no different. Same exact thing. We just want to be able to say, well, okay, we sold this, we want to send it to those guys. And then they're going to send back some stuff. That's all. You know what I mean? Yeah, we'll go through the port, we'll go through the, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Right? But no. Like, straight block them. You know what I mean? Why? One, because he's the forerunner of the prophet. So, if the prophet's not going to get through, like, you're definitely not getting through. Because we already infiltrated from the prophet's time. You know what I mean? So we already know that we have you. We're going to get you just on some $3 mail fraud. That's how we're going to get you. That's how, like, locked we have you. Right? So all this is in relation to this hearing that this judge has to have, because there's a conflict of interest. Right? Why I brought up Marcus Garvey. Right? And this is on page 166 in the Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. And remember, like, every source that we have, every source of information that we have as Moors, between Noble Drew Ali and between Marcus Garvey, regardless of who wrote it, should be picked up. One, just to support the nation, because who cares if, you know what I mean, that brother does whatever. If you have some info on the prophet, we can take it and, you know, we can digest and take out whatever, because everybody has some perspective of the prophet that's right. Like, everybody has a piece of the puzzle that's perfect. You know what I mean? But they just don't want to give their piece. They want to give, like, you know what I mean, their opinion a little bit and their this and that, so it could look nice. You know what I mean? And that they did it. You know what I'm saying? But no, this is like, no, Drew Ali said that Garvey is the forerunner. So we're going to take Garvey a little bit more serious than we did before, because, you know, even though we took him seriously before, right, and we have to up the level of how we really looked at him and his engagements with people, and, you know, why was he really meeting with the clan and all this type of stuff? You know what I mean? Right? So this is page 166. The theory of the indictment and of the trial was that everything that was done by or in the name of the Black Star Line was chargeable to the defendants. that it was only necessary to show that the matter originated in or emanated from the Black Star Line in order to receive in it evidence and charge the defendants with responsibility therefore. But the verdict of the jury in acquitting the other defendants necessarily implies that the acts of the other defendants were free from guilt and were no part either of the substantive scheme to defraud or of the conspiracy. It is alleged in the indictment that the scheme to defraud was made up of three elements: 1. False representations, pretenses, and promises; 2. The sale of stock of the Black Star Line; 3. The conversion of part of the proceeds from the sale of the stock to use of the defendants. The third element, conversion of part of the proceeds to use of the defendants, has no support in the record. At the time of the organization of the Black Star Line, Garvey received no compensation whatsoever. He worked for the corporation until September 1919, when at a director's meeting he was voted a salary of $50 a week. He drew his salary until sometime in 1920, when it was increased to $100 a week. Since the latter part of 1920, he received no salary from the Black Star Line. In September or November 1920, he was voted a salary of $10,000 a year by the Universal Negro Improvement Association. The sale of the stock of the Black Star Line was doubtless induced by the representations and promises made by Garvey and his associates. Upon the record and in view of the verdict of the jury, it is not open to the plaintiff in error to contend that the representations and promises made as to the success of the operation of the ships by the Black Star Line did not to some extent form part of the inducing cause. But no one reading the record can fail to realize that the ship project was but a small part, an incident of the large scheme that roused the enthusiasm of Garvey and appalled to the hopes and aspirations of thousands of his followers. No one can fail to be strongly impressed by the undoubted fact that the persons who contributed were more intent on the ultimate uplifting and salvation that was promised to the Negro race of America than upon the partly profits that might be realized from the stock investment. We do not pretend that a Negro charged with a crime is entitled to any special rights or favor, but we do contend that when the crime charged is one that involves the relations between the Negro and white races, the utmost care should be observed to safeguard the actual rights of the defendant. In this connection, we present the following considerations. 1. Application was made by Garvey to the trial judge, asking the trial judge to declare himself disqualified to try the indictments. The substantial ground of the application was that the judge was a member or a contributor to the Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and it appeared that persons active in the association were opposed to the Universal Negro Improvement Association, of which Garvey was the head. It also appeared that one of the members of the National Association had sought to initiate a criminal prosecution against Garvey. We all know who that is. The judge admitted his connection with the National Association, but denied the fact of bias. The motion was denied on the ground that the affidavit did not comply with the statute. 2. Testimony was received of acts of Garvey entirely unrelated to the charge in the indictment. It is true that in many instances, this testimony was elicited by cross-examination conducted by Garvey himself. But it is also true that in many instances, a plain suggestion of the fact came from the questions of the assistant district attorney, and Garvey was provoked to further questioning along these lines. This is particularly true of the matters relating to Garvey's association with certain women. 3. The court was unduly severe in its repeated admonition of Garvey. Time and time again, the court appears to have sustained objections that were never made. Time again, the court suggested to the assistant district attorney that an objection would be sustained. Where an examination is being conducted by a defendant on his own behalf, the impression that the court is taking the part of the prosecution and assisting the prosecution in the conduct of the case is bound to be disturbing and hurtful. The cumulative effect of the court's continued admonitions to the defendant was to give the jury the impression that Garvey was responsible for the undue length of the trial. This may have been the fact, and necessarily so, but it should have been the fact and necessarily so, but it should have been the aim of the court at all times to divert from the defendant any feeling on the part of the jury by reason of that fact. However, annoying the situation was the defendant was within his rights, and the annoyance should have no possible relation to the question of guilt or innocence. The attitude of the assistant district attorney toward Garvey during the trial was improper. The assistant district attorney had no just right to interrupt Garvey in his examination, except by proper objection to the court, or to address remarks directly to Garvey. We do not contend that legally any one of the foregoing matters constitutes itself legal error. We do contend, however, that the whole situation was one that tended unduly to prejudice the defendant in the conduct of this case, and to suggest an atmosphere of antagonism on the part of the court and the assistant district attorney that necessarily was reflected in the attitude of the jury. This situation helped to bring about the absurd result whereby the jury acquitted all of the defendants of the charges except that Garvey, through some strange vagary, was held on a charge in the indictment that had absolutely no evidence upon which to base the particular charge. And when we seek to understand how it was that the jury, by some inexplicable absurd process, found that Garvey was guilty of mailing a circular or letter to Dancy when there was not in the evidence any such circular or letter, and when there was not in evidence any means by which the circular or letter could be identified, and when the sole exhibit consisted of an envelope that did not even appear to have been addressed by Garvey or through his procurement, then we feel fully justified in stating that the verdict was unjust, and it was the result of speculation, if not passion or prejudice. The judgment of conviction should be reversed and the indictment dismissed. Dated New York, October 18, 1924. Respectfully submitted, Kahn and Nagler, attorneys for defendant Marcus Garvey. George Gordon Battle, Isaac H. Levy of counsel. Right.
I noticed once again, defendant in error.
Exactly. Right, like right at the beginning. Right at the beginning. And that's the whole reason why we just read through that whole thing. Just to show that all that means nothing. It's just stuff, it's just words on the paper to make the case.
Yeah.
Right?
See, like as if there was something lawful being done when the lawful part was already done at the beginning. Plaintiff in error.
Yeah. Right? Right at the beginning. Right? Upon the record and in view of the verdict of the jury, it is not open to the plaintiff in error to contend that the representations and promises made as to the success of the operation of the ships by the Black Star Line did not some extent form part of the inducing cause.
Yeah, and what is the Black Star Line? What is this? I'm not familiar with this case. What is this?
Black Star Line is the shipping company.
And so
that Garvey had.
Shipping company, and what happened? That's them shutting it down.
They're basically shutting it down.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's them saying, nah, you can't. You know, because plaintiff in error.
Is this his shipping company with his everybody go back to Africa thing, or
that wasn't his.
Goods?
That wasn't his.
What wasn't his?
Going back to Africa in the Black Star Line.
Okay.
That's not his concept.
So that was just like goods.
That's just talk, like weed was found on King Solomon's grave.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? That's what that is. Right? Because Garvey wasn't at it.
Yeah.
Man had lawyers in it. So he didn't know nothing about law. And they were just, butchering him.
Yeah.
Right? That's where all the money went. Right? Because remember, he did represent himself.
Yeah.
When he went up there. But he didn't have counsel. He had to have counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's, you know what I mean? Like, because first thing, status is the first issue.
Yeah.
That's what the whole thing with the judge of the Zimmerman thing is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your status. What's your status?
And Garvey tried to disqualify the judge as well. Is that? And the judge denied. Like, what happened there?
It wasn't
No, this is the
correctly in regards to the statute.
Well, I guess it would be once again come back to the status plain in error.
right. Okay, this is the United States Circuit Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Marcus Garvey, plaintiff in error, against United States of America, defendant in error.
Now that's a new one.
Right?
Everybody's in error.
Okay? Right? So, this is United States of America versus Marcus Garvey. Right? And everything from the case.
Yeah.
Right? Just like the FBI files.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On the temple. It's like the exact same thing. This one is just having to do with this.
Yeah.
Right? And this is what connected Drew Ali to the Prophet. The fact that he could be used that as an example to show you that, yeah, look, like we can use that today. We're not even going to use Dred Scott now.
Yeah.
We don't even need to use Dred Scott. How about we're going to use Marcus Garvey?
Yeah.
We're going to use Marcus Garvey's case with the Black Star Liner, right? And how come everybody's mad that they treated him like that? Right? When the reality is plaintiff in error.
Yeah.
Man says he's Garvey.
Yeah.
Like, talking about. And you want to get, right? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, yo,
You want to own profit.
the appeal is legit.
Yeah.
Right? The appeal is legit.
Yeah.
Every claim is like, yo, dead on. Like, dead on. Like, yo, judge should just be, you know what? I recuse myself and just dismiss. And every judge that comes up recuse themselves. Nobody wants to touch it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how tight it is.
Yeah.
But, plaintiff in error.
Yeah. One.
What's your status?
It's a missing piece.
What's your status? Right? And this is Garvey. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody, we don't even have to go into nothing. Everybody knows Garvey. Okay, well, Garvey was in error. Plaintiff in error. It's on the case in his book. Right?
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, exactly. More put me onto that.
Holy.
To go back and read Philosophies of the Things again. Okay, let me just go read it again and see. Yo. And
it says plaintiff in
yo, straight says it.
Like
On numerous pages. Like it just keeps saying it over and over again.
a bunch of different occasions.
It just keeps saying it, yo.
It even says that the United States was in error, or U.S.
US was in error.
Whatever they were.
Yeah.
And again, too, like, you know, like we're here So we can pass it wrong, like here. Right? But you go get the book. The book that's been sitting on the shelf, you haven't picked it up in like 5 years. Go to page 167.
That book may even be in the Jamaican Council. After all, Marcus Garvey is one of the Jamaican.
Yeah.
What do they call it when they have nanny? They have like Bogo and whatever honors they give to those people. They're
national heroes.
They're national heroes or whatever. Yeah. So it's Nanny, Marcus Garvey, and
Bogo, Bogo, Sam Sharp.
Right. You go down it. Okay. So just gonna take an excerpt from a book called The Charter of Rights, a 7th century document on various legal and moral rights of human beings. Imam Zainu el-Abin, the 4th Shiite Imam, Vancouver Islamic Educational Foundation, Canada. The Charter of Rights. And, first edition, 1972.
So this is for.
Yeah, we're gonna. Right, so this is the preface. Preface. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein is the 4th of the 12 divinely appointed successors of the last messenger of Allah, Muhammad al-Mustafa. Blessings and mercy of Allah be on him and his progeny. He is the first among the Imams whose writings have survived and are helping the followers in their spiritual journey, guiding them in every sphere of life. His piety and devotion to worship has earned him the titles of Zainu al-Abidin, adornment of the worshippers, and Sayyidun Sajidin, leader of those who prostrate in prayer. His book of invocations, known as Saifa al-Kamila, is a treasure of spiritual, theological, and ethical knowledge. One of his most important but lesser known works is Rasalatu Laqo, which is hereby presented to our English knowing brethren with the hope that they may use it as a guide on their dealings with the people. Before Islam, no society had any idea of reciprocity of rights. Before Islam, no society had any idea of reciprocity of rights. The Roman law, from which the modern Western codes have originated, gave the head of a family the status of a deity. He was their absolute owner and could kill with impunity, but not only his slaves, but even his other dependents, wives, sons, etc. Thus one party had all the rights, while others had been burdened with the duties without any rights. The Greek system was not much different from the Roman code. In fact, all ancient civilizations had created a privileged group which had all the rights and another group which had no rights at all. Generally, women, children, especially the orphans, slaves, serfs, and people of lower strata were oppressed and deprived of rights. Islam, for the first time in the history of mankind, established and enforced the principle of reciprocity of rights by saying, "And the women have rights similar to those which men have upon them in a just manner." Surah 2:228. Many Islamic axioms and proverbs reflect this idea. Imam Ali Imam Ali bin Abi Talib talked about the mutual rights of the ruler and his subjects in a lecture delivered at Siffin. He said, "By placing me over your affairs, Allah the Glorified has created my right over you, and you have a right over me like mine over you. A right does not accrue to any person unless it accrues against him also, and a right does not accrue against a person unless it is also accrues in his favor. The greatest of these rights that Allah the Glorified has made obligatory is the right of the ruler over the ruled, and the right of the ruled over the ruler. If the ruled fulfill the rights of the ruler, then the ruler fulfills their rights. Then the truth attains the position of honor among them. The ways of religion become established, signs of justice become fixed, and the sunnah gains acceptance." And that was Wadi Said's sermon. In order to create a balance between the mutual rights and duties of various groups, it is essential to delineate them in clear terms. And Islam has done it through the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet, and the traditions of the Imams. Now, one thing too to address, that every time, we're reading Muslim books, and they say Islam, like we have to think Eyes of Allah, Master. And when they say the Prophet, we have to think Nabi Ali, right? So Ali said that, we honor all divine prophets, Muhammad, Buddha, Confucius, right? So, alright. So, whenever we see them, we put him in there. If it says Jesus, we put Prophet, because Jesus is on our nationality card. If it says Muhammad, we put Prophet, because that name's on the nationality card. All praises be to all of them. So, every name that's on the nationality card, take those stuff as serious as you take the Prophet. And then we crack this thing easy. Like easy. Just because. It's all one frequency. You know what I mean? And it's like the coil in the hair that every time it hits the kink, it keeps getting faster, or the vibrations gets higher. Right?
And that's a icky, sticky point for some people who still consider themselves, pious or whatever. That, those 5 universal prophets, they're the 5 universal prophets. Like, it might hurt you. You may not see it that way. You may not want to include one or this. Tough, Like, that's what it is. Everybody knows it. Like, in the back of their mind, whether they want to admit it or not. Like, it's about, you know what I mean? Performing that role. And they performed the role. It wasn't better than anybody else or anything. They just performed the role.
The Prophet was also known, accept that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So for you who's a student of that, whatever school it is, just that your teacher is on that vibe.
Yeah.
Right. And also check the play with Sunni or Shiite, right? Muslims, right? Check the play with them. And as far as them being in America and how the idea come about being Muslim in America, right? Like, where does the idea come from? Because Islam's from the East. Okay, well, this is the West, so what's Islam doing here? If this is indigenous land and, they worship nature. Right? Like, why is Islam in America? The same reason why, there's Egypt in America. Because it's one thing. You know what I mean? It's not it's a vast republic. It's very vast, right? Because, like, you know, the Sun people, Republic, you know, R-E, public, God's people, Sun people, the melanin people, the Moors, the black people, whatever you want to call them, but the people that have melanin, right? You know what I mean? And we laid foundation, right? Everything that, like this is supposed to be
7th century.
like, this is a Muslim talking, Shiite. This is a Shiite talking right now, right? More than 600 years has passed since the establishment of the reciprocal rights in Islam, when the English landlords forced King John in 1215 to put his signature on the document known as the Magna Carta, and which the Western world mistakenly describes as the first Charter of Rights. So this is a mom now, talking about the Magna Carta, right? So let's back up now to the Magna Carta, so everybody could know where we're at. And this information, as far as the Magna Carta, comes from a website called DTax Canada. So we'll DTax Canada, and it's this European sovereign guy named Eldon Warming, who, when we first started getting the information, that's where we first got the kick about the fraud and the flag and people getting sued because they use the Canada flag and stuff like that, and starting to look more as into the corporate government perspective, right? DTax Canada, right? So, and it's not no, he's not on no sovereignty vibes. He's just on exposing the fraud of Canada, that there's this fraud going on, and nobody wants to recognize that the fraud, and there's no constitution, and then this is a great republic that we can all just be free to do whatever we want in Canada. European, this is how he's talking on his website, and those guys have power, shut down people. His website's not shut down. You know what I mean? Like, you can email him, he'll email you back, have a conversation. You know what I mean? But he's defending fiat, because it's all about selling info, right? It's all about selling the packages. You know what I mean? 20 CDs. For real, right? It will save you. Yeah. It will save you, because those 20 CDs are serious CDs, some CDs to have in the archives, but just to help you not to study. You know what I mean? Because they're studying it for us. The stuff like like Magna Carta. Like, I don't want to go study about the Magna Carta, but I could go to this man. He's already done the study. You know what I mean? I already know what I'm looking for. You know what I mean? I just have to pick out what, right? So, right, they go through the whole thing, bring the Magna Carta out and read the Magna Carta. And no, let's just ask the European, because Drew already said, the Europeans got to tell the truth. So, like, why not? Let's hear what the European has to say. You know what I'm saying? Right? So bring this up because we brought up Magna Carta, which the Western world mistakenly describes as the first charter of rights. So the first charter of rights, according to the Western world, is Magna Carta. Now we all have to ask the question now.
1260.
We have to ask the question now. If this is the West, who is he talking about? With these Western people that have this concept that the Magna Carta is the first charter. If the West people is the dark skinned people, because we don't Magna Carta, like that's That's nothing to us, right? He's saying the Western world, so the Western Hemisphere, over on this side, believes or mistakenly describes the Magna Carta as the first charter of rights. But the Magna Carta has to do with Europeans.
That's false.
Right?
Yeah, but then again, where he would be, if he's Middle East, the Western world to him, they still call Europe
The West. Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't just refer to here as the West.
Right.
Europe is the West.
Right.
Well, they're the Western.
But that's the thing though. But Europe's in the East.
Exactly. For us.
You know what I mean? Right, but even for them, because if they're gonna look over here and say we're over in the West, then you know what I mean.
And for me, I just, one thing I struggle with when we talk of all these continents, I don't see how Europe is
Even
a
in
continent
a continent
separate from Asia.
from Asia, exactly.
I was playing a family board game just a couple nights ago, or whatever it was, and that was a question in the board game. The question was, which one of these countries or cities, whatever it was, is on 2 continents? And then so they gave you all the name of like the different countries or whatever, and you know it was men versus women, and that was a question for us. We had the 5 questions. We had to 5 answers. We had to find which one was on 2 continents, and each answer was tricky. And I was like, Turkey was, I think it was Istanbul was the answer.
Yeah.
And I was the one who got the answer. I was like, wait a minute, Istanbul, isn't that like Turkey, Middle East or something like that? And I'm like, wait a minute. They consider Europe and Asia as 2 different continents, and as far as I know, those 2 things, there's no break.
There's no break in it.
Yeah. So I was like, it gotta be Istanbul. Everybody else was just on 1 continent.
Yeah.
And
sometimes they even say Eurasia.
Eurasia.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I still.
The hush people ask
Yeah.
that question.
Yeah.
Well,
Eurasia.
what used to be Eurasia? And you're like, but still.
Which continent that is?
Right.
So if they want to consider them a separate continent for Asia, that would also be the West.
Right.
That would be Europe would be Western.
Yeah. So Magna Carta. Right. So this is BTAX Canada. Eldon, brother Eldon, killing them. The 1215 Magna Carta was declared void by Pope Innocent III. The Pope's approved version in 1225 version signed by King Henry II, Magna Carta 1215. Complete 1297 King Edward version. In this version we find freeman altogether instead of free man, as the original freeman equal slave granted some freedoms, and person a false role or status imposed on a man, thus showing the beginning of the deception by the king and pope to romanticize and enslave the English people. Magna Carta 1297.
That's what's written in the Magna Carta.
This is what he's writing about the Magna Carta. Yeah.
Okay.
Right? This is what he's writing. Yeah. We live in a country that, according to a world court ruling a few years ago, the Western Sahara case belongs by allodial title to the First Nations people. Right? We live in a country that, according to a world court ruling a few years ago, and the world court ruling is the Western Sahara case, Western Sahara.
Yeah.
Alright, West is over here. Okay. Right? Belongs by allodial title to the First Nations people. If anyone in Canada should feel great umbrage concerning the present Canadian government's despotic and underhanded tactics, it should be the native people. Right? Canadian governments are now setting up the process whereby the international bankers can indebt and seize in bankruptcy huge sections of Canada. These are called First Nation land claims, areas of mineral-rich land turned over to native councils that will, in all likelihood, do the bidding of the international bankers, and who will take their people into debt and loss of their lands through that debt. It is the same scheme that deprived many a small European country of its sovereignty during the Middle Ages. Canadians have been without lawful federal and provincial government since 1931, and actually since 1901. Right, notice the timeline. Right. However, Canadians were and have been duped into believing that Canada had been confederated as a country in 1867. There was no confederation. Canada was just created as a super colony of Great Britain and actually administered by the corporate administrative crown of the independent city-state called the City of London, which is wholly owned by the corporate Holy Roman Empire, whose CEO is the Pontiff of Rome. This was done from behind a veil called British Board of Trade. An impostor monarch and monarchy imposed upon us since 1901 upon the death of Queen Victoria. The Statutes Revision Act 1893 eliminated the succession rights of British monarchs as the monarch of Canada, as was found in Section 2 of the BNA Act 1867. After passage of the Statute of Westminster 1931, the Crown of the City of London has surreptitiously put us in a deeper bondage than Canadians were under the Crown of Great Britain when Canada was its subservient colony. The banksters of the colony of London replaced the British Crown as our de facto colonial ruler. In 1893, Statutes Revision Act was repealed by the British government in 1998. However, British acts have no force or effect in Canada since 1931, and an erased act or portion of an act would have to be re-legislated back into existence. Section 2 of the BNA Act has not been reenacted, nor has it been re-included in the de facto Constitution Act of Canada, 1982. We have no lawful established conditions for our provincial governments, nor for our federal government. The so-called Constitution Act of 1982 is an absolute hoax and fraud. The fact that it was not ratified by the Canadian people and by the inclusion of the notwithstanding clause totally negates it as a constitution or as the supreme law of Canada. And Article 1 or Section 1 in the Guarantee of Rights of Freedoms in the Constitution Act of Canada says that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law, and can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. So, even though the Magna Carta was a fraud, they made it as far as they have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms now. And that's how far they made it. Right? And it's not a thing of they can't do that. I mean, that's cool. If that's what you want to do, if you want to make people corporations and all that stuff, yo, do your thing. Just go back to Europe to do that. Because you don't have any sovereignty over here to be doing that.
So, and then that crown, when they talk about the crown when you go to court, which crown is that?
Where's the crown?
The crown of the Bar Association. So it's not even, that's not even like what you think like the Queen.
Here in Canada,
So they just,
they use different words all the time.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Most
say
of the
that.
time, it's like you can have one court case and you keep getting, say, a disclosure, or then you get like, all from the beginning. From the charge, it says somebody versus you. One name that they use is Regina. Regina versus then your straw man. Sometimes it'll say the Queen, or it will say Victoria, or you know what I'm saying? So I don't know where
Why do they
anything
use vagina?
that's also
'cause that's
their name.
Yeah, that's the name.
Like Queen Victoria, Regina, whatever.
but they're not writing out the person's full name or their title.
Yeah,
Because when you talk about a royal, it should be titled as long as half the page.
Was there one we named vagina at one time?
that was one of her names.
Middle name.
Vagina?
Regina, Regina.
Oh, Regina.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, and also as they mentioned there in the article, something to do with law, like the part that you read for the Constitution Act, Article 1.
Yeah. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law, as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society.
So, yeah, with that, the things that they would do now is, for them, law, right? So they're going to go and use the Magna Carta as to justify whatever they're doing when they're dealing with your strawman. Because as in it, it says
Or
the
dealing
person,
with these
Magna Carta
your
straw
person
people anyway.
straw.
Yeah.
Also,
Them times 12,
they
15,
don't
they're
charge
doing
you.
straw man.
If you read your charge, it doesn't say you're charged with this, whatever the crime, contrary to the
the
Constitution.
Constitution.
So it's contrary to the criminal code, because that's their next strawman jurisdictional law. Yeah, so they always, even with certain cases, I looked at it, I'm like, okay, you've committed murder, that's a constitutional violation. Like, they could charge you contrary to the Constitution, but they still won't. Because I don't know if that would expose anything for them or something. They'd still charge you with something contrary to the criminal code.
Yeah.
Keep it over there. Like, keep it hidden.
Right? And then, right, so this is the same Shiite Imam now, right? So more than 600 years had passed since the establishment of the reciprocal rights in Islam, when the English landlords forced King John in 1215 to put his signature on the document known as the Magna Carta, and which the Western world mistakenly describes as the first charter of rights. Then came the American Constitution, which, with its Bill of Rights, which in fact had given no rights to the black population of the United States of America. It was in the 1960s that the Supreme Court began granting the black Americans civil and social rights, and then the Congress followed suit. Right?
so that was a big mistake to civil rights movement.
So, and the Imam's telling you, but he's Muslim, so we're not gonna listen to him because he's Muslim. He says a lie, and they wear hijabs and all that stuff. Right?
You don't know about American law.
Then came the American Constitution, right? So first of all, the American Constitution, not the U.S. Constitution or the United States Constitution, but the American Constitution. And the American Constitution is the indigenous constitution, which is the great law of the great peace that they used in order to make the United States of America Constitution. Right? Right. Like up to the 10th Amendment.
That's us.
Yeah.
After that,
After that is like is straight corporate. Right? Right? So, and he's saying that then came. So we already know that the Magna Carta is fraud. So we could take out the then and deal with the fact that, okay, that's the first constitution. Because prior to that, the implication was that the Magna Carta was mistakenly described as the first. Then came the American Constitution. So he already dealt with the fact that it's a fraud because it's mistakenly described as the first.
yeah, that's a good point. Because I was going to ask you today too, with Canada and the United States, right? And I thought we might have used a different constitution. So I'm glad I actually brought that up because I was going to say, it's still the same.
Yeah, it's the United States of America Constitution.
Yeah, like what you
Because
said,
Canada,
first 10.
yeah,
That's, you don't need anything.
and just like Eldon was breaking down, like there hasn't been nothing since 1901, as far as here's concerned. Well, there was, because there was the United States Constitution, but nobody was using that because everyone was trying to eschew Canada. Right? Because that was the last, you know what I mean, little bit of space that they can try to jack. Right?
Yeah,
Last booty they could get.
I would think that he even says then came because he's going to refer to more the U.S. Constitution, whereas now they use the Magna Carta to draft the 14th and 15th Amendment.
Yeah.
Because, like, when people, even a lot of people who's onto the knowledge, they read it and it's still not clear to them where it says, like, the straw man or whatever. It's because it's hidden in the words,
Yeah.
all persons born. That's the straw man. All persons born within the U.S.
Yeah.
So that's what the 14th Amendment says, is all persons born. And that is referring now evolving straw man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Versus
Exactly. Right.
So when it says all person born, it means the natural person and the right?
They're just turning everybody straw.
Yeah. Just because they said persons.
Yeah, that word
If
person.
they say persons, you already know.
There's a whole lot of different types of persons.
Right, and we're going back to the part which in fact had given no rights to black people of the United States of America. It was in the 1960s that the Supreme Court began granting the black Americans civil and social rights. So the Imam's telling them that they gave you those rights. So if you're getting rights, then those are rights. You're getting played, yo.
Yeah.
Still, today.
I see they're leaving out that key word there, birth. They just say rights.
Yeah.
Because if they say birthrights,
Right, it automatically goes back to
they can't give it to you.
right. Exactly.
You already have it.
You already have it. Right?
So,
But they would put other things in front of rights, social, civil, you know what I mean?
these
To
privileges.
make it seem like there's rights called that. So, you know, here they are. You know?
And just an experience too, just to let people know the magnitude of this. In a court case I had. So, And that's a big thing with your court case, where they say like the Crown gets to select, and here in Canada, Crown selects whether they're gonna proceed summarily, which means provincial jurisdiction, or indict if it's an indictable offense, which would now be federal. Indictable offenses, being federal and all, is when you're allowed to have jury and stuff. Summarily, then it goes into some criminal code stuff where you have no jury. I found this out because as I'm standing up in court, and I make that request. I said, well, I asked the judge first, is this a criminal court? He said, yes. I said, okay, well, according to law, I have the right to a jury. And then the judge responds to me, you have no right. Criminal code, the Crown has selected to proceed summarily. So, and it said, you have no rights.
Yeah.
And like, if this was a full courtroom, I'm sure everybody would have been looking back by that.
That would have been news.
But because they know it's me, I'm the only one who's ever in the courtroom.
Yeah.
So, what was your status going into the court?
It's like I said, they know it's me. They know my claims. They still try to deal with you only in your straw. Regardless, you come in there and you put your status.
You are.
This is who I am, and extradition, and all of that type of stuff.
And again, it's not, it's not a, it's a fraud thing for people who really shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Who really shouldn't be exercising. I mean, like, we're being ourselves, right? But they can't be themselves unless they're in allegiance with us, because we're the natives. So if you're not in allegiance with us and you want to go out there and do whatever, then take what you get, because we can't really assist you because you're not down for the cause. That's why we want to get black people to understand. Like, we don't want to work with you because, we have a problem with you calling yourself black. I get what you're saying, but if you're coming to me as that, and I'm a national, and you want me to talk to you, but you're, on all fours, eating all the thing, and you want me to really sit at the table and have business discussion with you about reparations or something? And I give you something to drink, and you're putting your tongue in the glass, and like, you really want me to do business with you, really, right? And that's what we're trying to tell people to their face, like, it's nothing personal, but your status. You have to fix your status. That's all. Just fix your status. You can be black. Just put L on it. Be black L.
Back to Marcus Garvey. Plaintiff in
error. Why is plaintiff in error? Because, what's your name? The first issue of law is status. What is your status? If you don't have any status, sorry, we can't do nothing for you. You know what I mean? That's the first issue, status. It depends on what you're dealing with. You know what I mean? Sometimes we might just go corporate just because we don't want the headache. You know what I mean? All rights reserved, UCC, bam, bam, bam. Okay, let's go. Okay, come on, get me out of here. I'm not sitting here all day waiting for you guys. Let's go. You know what I mean? That have known about Noble Drew Ali or heard about him or whatever since 1913 to now. Newborn means like spanking new, untouched, in the package still. Hasn't even had a chance to like get fingerprints on or nothing. New. Every territory, right? Every territory has been touched by the prophet. Because he went everywhere. Like if he came to Toronto, he went everywhere. If you come to Toronto. Before 1929. And look in direction of where the rivers are coming from. You know what I mean? You know? This man is getting ready for the wave. Right? You know, you're just trying to get on your board and man's like, God, like, yo, right with it. Right? Now that was the cover of the newspaper, front page news. Big picture of the prophet and the convention. In the article that Noble Drawley is the founder of Islam in America. Peace be unto the prophet. And don't put Muhammad on it. Don't think they're talking about Muhammad when they do that. Like, they're on a different frequency. Just keep your ears to the street and listen to how they talk when they talk about Muhammad. There's ones that are going to say, yeah, Prophet Muhammad. And there's one that just say the prophet.
And at the same time,
The prophet has spoken. Right? Friday, November 9th, 1928. rights to everybody. This is for all governors and grand chiefs and head officials that guide any body of Moors of any temple of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Right? He or she must be of good moral standard and a heart of love, and their works must be of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. They are to imitate the Prophet in speech and teachings in any said temple. They must not be under the influence of intoxicating liquors or any harmful motive that will terminate to become detrimental to the organization. It must be known that any leader staying away from home or neglecting his duty at home or must allow the public to know of their wrongdoings. They must forever live the life of love at home, and it must no finance business is to be opened with any group of members of any temple by the governor or grand chief or whosoever is in charge without the consultation of I, the Prophet. All uplifting funds are to be issued only through I, the Prophet, because that money is to finance the Moorish movement. The head of any temple can maintain an emergency fund which cannot exceed the amount from 25 cents to 50 cents per member. All public collections and dues also of each said. No finance books are to be served except by the Prophet. The head of every temple must by law obey the word of the Prophet, and any leader law, supreme words of so earlier in the preface, in this book right here, the Charter of Rights, it also talks about these rights that exist, that are hidden in like the code of the Quran. Like this is what allows you to activate the spiritual nature, being able to have these rights and know what they are and exercise them, right? So this is in the introduction. No, may Allah have mercy on you that Allah has certain rights on you which cover you in your every movement and stillness, every place where you are, every limb which you move, and every tool which you use. Some of these rights are greater than others. The greatest of all the right is which Allah Himself has upon you. That is the root of all rights, as all of them spring from it. He has established rights which your different limbs have upon you, from your head to your foot. So He gave rights to your eyes, ears, tongue, hands, feet, stomach, and your private parts. These 7 parts cover all your activities. And there's a part called the rights of the dependents. Right, so this is the right of the dependents. And it says the rights of the pupil. It is the right of your dependents in knowledge that you should know that Allah has made you their master by bestowing upon you knowledge and entrusting you with the treasure of wisdom. Therefore, if you are generous in this commission given you by Him, and if you act as a benevolent trustee who wishes his master well in looking after his servant, and who is patient and observant enough to bring out the wealth of knowledge of his hand whenever he sees a needy person, You will be a virtuous man, and you will have hope and true faith. Otherwise, you will be guilty of embezzlement of the knowledge given to you by God, and of tyranny against his creatures, and will be liable to be deprived of his knowledge and honor by God. So if you don't become virtuous, then embezzlement's your charge. Right? And Noble Ali told the Moors, the head of every temple must by law obey the work of the prophet. The truster, then giving it to the trustee, and then the trustee is supposed to now hold it in good faith, without causing any interference or encumbrance or anything like that, because this is the supreme words of the prophet. So these are the things that's his direct writings, because he's Muhammad too, right? That have the essence of Islam in it. And then there's some of his writings where he talks, and then it has the essence of the Christianity in it. And then some next people that he talks, and it has the energy of Buddhism in it. And for next people he talks, it has the energy of, so all the bases are covered. So everybody can look at the prophet as, okay, yeah, that's the reincarnation of the prophets from before, so let's get on the love, truth, peace, freedom, justice right now. Right, and save the nation, not our little individual pocket that we think is the nation. Like Moors even have it cuckoo, that they're the nation. The nations are the Hittites and the what's the chapter 47 and 46 and all that, Canaanites and all of them. It's not just the Moabites only that make up the nation. It's not just the Washita only, right? The jurisdiction is the human family. Nations, everyone needs saving, because everybody fell to the depths of sin and called themselves name, and everybody was plaintiff in error. You know what I mean? And don't want to accept the fact that they were plaintiff in error. Right? And this is like a Shiite, that we can't dash away stuff because of personal, the what we might have. You know what I mean? Because some people follow the killers of the prophet, doesn't mean that they don't have jewels too.
Even to say exactly like all the prophets, right? Even if we say we're Muslim, doesn't mean that we wouldn't read the Bible,
right?
Or
Exactly.
teachings of Jesus,
right?
It's still his word still applies to us, regardless of how who's ever taken it and trying to mold it to serve their own purposes. There's still, the truth is still going to be the truth. So you can twist it to try and play your favor, but I always say, for someone to make you believe their lie, they have to put the truth in it. Like when you want to lie to somebody, like especially off the top, like somebody, your girlfriend asks you, "Oh, where were you last night?" I was playing ball. Like, at some point last night you were playing ball. Like, you know what I'm saying? You just didn't tell her the rest of the story. So that's it. You always gotta involve
get into that subject.
That's just an example of it. You've got to use the truth. And some parts of it, make them follow the rest in your story.
Rope them.
Yeah.
So someone was just asking online about we're speaking about trust. We're just building on trust. Wanderer. So, not to really, I'm not saying that it might answer your question, but just to touch on it, I have Weiss's Concise Trustee Handbook here, okay? And it says, we're talking about rights and responsibilities also in the Charter of Rights, right? So in there it talks about rights that you have and then rights that someone has against you. That's the way it was termed. In other words, it was just saying that with rights comes responsibilities. It's not a privilege. It's not something you ask for and then maybe you get, maybe you don't. It's those are your rights, but then you have to uphold your responsibilities. So when we talk about trustees, they have rights and responsibilities. Okay, so express trust. This is from Tax Commissioners of Massachusetts and Unincorporated Associations, 19 legislative investigation into the economic effect on the state in 1911. In the first part of the report, offers the following definition: express trust put the legal estate entirely into one or more persons, while others have a beneficial interest in and out of the same, but are neither partners nor agents. This simple, adequate common law right any person or group of persons sui juris may exercise. The trustees issuing certificates of beneficial and capital interest divided into shares, as well as issuing bonds and other obligations as freely as they open a bank account, have a passbook, and draw and circulate checks, or make whatever contractual relations are allowed to persons as a natural right. So it says what becomes clear from this definition is that the express trust is not merely a property interest held by one for the benefit of another like any basic trust. Rather, it is a trust created by private contracts for the holding of a divisible property interest, wherein the trustee is empowered by the settlor to do for a beneficiary of his, the trustee's choosing, whatever he may do for himself as an individual sui juris. What has been created here is a trust organization, lawfully by natural right. As a general proposition, it may be asserted that one who creates a trust may mold it into whatever form he pleases, and that whatever one may lawfully do himself, he may authorize another to do for him. Doing so requires no benefit, privilege, or franchise from any government or other outside party, and therefore the parties owe no duty to any government or other outside party to the extent that no common law criminal or civil wrong is the purpose of the contract. When done properly, the trust is afforded all the common law protections ordinarily given to private contracts, particularly the obligation of them. So now the question is whether the parties to the contract are truly acting sui juris, i.e. of their pure, unadulterated common law natural rights, because if the parties import or associate benefits which grant an outside party a vested interest in the proposed contract, then the contract has required a third party overseer/intervener. In other words, declare your nationality, right, and take interest in your birthrights and your vast estate, and
it's in a trust for you, sitting
trust.
There,
but
just waiting.
If you're holding on to benefits of a third party, then that's gonna obviously bring them in. You have to cut out, like you can't be trying to hold on to those benefits.
Can't serve two masters.
Right. So that you're in your common law brackets, they put in brackets natural rights. Because if the parties import or associate benefits which grant an outside party a vested interest in the proposed contract, then the contract has acquired a third party overseer/intervener.
That's why Noble Jolly said about your nationality, your religion, and the title to your vast estate. About you the Circle 7, about you the 101s, I do declare that you are a nation.
So any benefits we receive, like driver's license, EI, welfare,
Exactly.
cut it all off.
Like, but don't forget, this was back then.
And as the same thing what he said, with your rights comes responsibility. Prophet told you, enforce the Constitution.
Right.
So if you're being your natural self, you're practicing your rights, which is the right to travel, you enforce the Constitution, and you don't serve two masters pulling out some driver's license.
Not because, you know, if you have a clean record, you know, you wouldn't pull it out and show it because you have it, and, you know what I mean, like, you know, it works for you. Right? You know, like, but it's not just about those things. You know, like people get caught up in you have your birthright, also I can drive without a license, and I can not pay taxes, and I can, you know, when talking about nationality today, tomorrow go to your job, yo, this bullshit. Go to the bank, yo, forget you guys not getting nothing from me ever again, yo.
You got $10?
Right? You know, but you could have just, you know, okay, alright, I get it. You know what I mean? Let me just digest this a little bit, because
Come at you in some way, you still protected yourself from the beginning. So that's when you see that it was
it's like with like your brother has a question, right, online about the express trust, and, you know, when's it gonna active. What's going on with it is yo, like, we had this since 1913, and we're just finding out about it 2012, right? That's not our fault. Like, nothing's not gonna go on with it. You know what I mean? Like, what? Like, it's like when we talk about, you know, yeah, court date. Yeah, man, we're our court date. But then nobody's at a court date. But it's a nation, though. And, you know, we're more. You know, we all got fezzes and all that. But in court day time, you know, it's class time. You know, 3 people, 5 people. You know, right? So what we do, we know that there are people have obligations and stuff like that. So yeah, we set it up online. So watch it from home. If you can't come to class, it's no problem. It's no big deal because, you know, we're also members, being a Grand Sheikh and a Grand Chairman and a Grand Mufti, etc. So we're going to do what we have to do regardless because we're members. Right? We were just representatives, and then the people came and they said, well, you know what, this thing says Moorish Science Temple of America, and this has been going on since like 1913 or something. So we need something to verify that you are who you say you are, because, you know, people use names and run frauds and stuff. Okay, cool, no problem. You know, make call them more. You know, what's up? Grand Sheikh, yeah? Oh, well, we need a letter because these people give us a letter so we can get this thing done.
Alright, no problem.
And that's that. Right? Exactly. Everybody's supposed to be added. What the hell Jesus have 12 disciples around him for? For them just to follow him around like some lappy dog, just follow him around everywhere he goes? Yo, go do something, yo. Like, go do something. What are you around me for? Yeah, we got people to save out here. You got, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Class just true, everybody's class empty. You know what I mean? Nobody come to class because there's class everywhere now. You know what I mean? Exactly. You know what I mean? Or we don't have to go, you know, because, you know, this more is doing it. You know? Because as one more, that's a way. We represent like 50,000 people. One of us. Because don't forget, we're not talking about minority, majority, we're talking about energy. And one of us that's Moorish American, national, standing on their nationality and birthrights, knows what it is, doesn't have no questions about it. Only questions that you have is, hey, what did you do in your thing? Oh, that's what you did? Well, this is what I did. Okay, well, let's trade. Okay, I'm going to try this when I have court next week, and I'll let you know how this went. Or I'll let you, you know, talk to my print man and use him because, you know, the rate that I get is way more than what you get. Right? Or, oh, well, you know, well, I don't see any Moorish papers right now, and there's only these group of Moors that have a paper. So how about we all just send them all our articles, right? You know, I mean, if you're going to put 2 pages in, you're saying, what, depending how big the article is, you know, $10 an article, 5 articles, bam. All right, that's 1 page we can pay for. And then we have a national newspaper, you know, international newspaper. So we have Moors in other countries that have their own newspaper. And they're like, yo, hey, you know, we noticed that you boys over there are doing some activity over there. We just want to do some business with you. Oh, yeah, sure, let's do it, yeah. Right?
Everybody, our nations is doing it themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Right out here, walking along Lloyd's right across the street over there, there's a little newspaper box, like different, just a little one. Pakistani Post.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I seen that, I was like, oh man.
And nobody's going to go buy that but Pakistanis.
Yeah. Just sitting there, Pakistani Post, reporter,
and take your paper.
Yeah.
Right? And that's their paper, individual paper. Just like we have a Moorish Guide newspaper, they have Pakistani paper, somebody else has whatever paper. But it's not just some newsprint. It's a national paper talking about national affairs that's going on with these particular national people called Pakistani or Sudanese or whatever they call their thing, right? And we have to get on the level of, like I was doing with more today. You know, we don't need to like bring people together and, you know what I mean? You know, clean them up, right? You're not gonna give the drug dealer the temple keys. No, you're gonna reform them, like, because that's first thing people are gonna come and say, oh, you guys supporting drug dealers now that they gotta. No, we're not saying support no drug dealers. We're saying reform them. That's why we have Circle 7, 101 questionnaire, flyers, books, handouts, DVDs. That's everybody brought somebody, and somebody's always bringing somebody. You know, it's like when they, you know, when I don't truly name me, like when man's coming with empty hands. You know, we're gonna go do something, and there's always a man coming with the hands swinging. You know what I mean? Man doesn't have a juice, man doesn't have a six pack, man doesn't have like some food, some chicken, a little box of nothing, just, you know, but box always full. You know what I mean? Belly's always full. You know? Eating better than everybody. Eating better, yeah, everybody. You know? Right?
Maybe you're hungry, they're pulling out
food out of their pocket, wrap up in that foil paper. But yeah, but it's to get active. It's to get active. Because the sellout, people don't really look at the sellout like how heavy it is. Like, you guys killed the prophet. You know what I mean? Yeah, he knew it was gonna happen and whatever. But like, you know what you have to do? You know what you have to go through to kill the prophet?
So you gotta be sick in your own.
Like, you know, you have like to even
wait as to
think about plotting.
Yeah, to even go back to Jesus. What happened to Judas? You know, saying after he sold him out, he had to go hang himself. Overcome with all of that, like the amount of backstabbing that he had to do. He didn't want his reward.
Yeah,
he didn't want his reward.
And so that's just pepper in the pot,
Yeah.
You know? Okay. Right. So, you know, the big deal is, you know, this is a republic for real. Always gonna be a republic. So that's all that it, like, there can't be anything else than that. You know what I mean? Like, we're still here. All the slavery, all the this and all the that and all the stuff we want to complain they did to us and they beat us up and we're still here. You know what I mean? We still have knowledge of ourselves. Like, we're still moving. Right? And it's only the true and faithful Moors who follow the prophet. And I follow like dumb nigger behind them, you know what I mean? Always pat him on the shoulder, ask him a question and stuff. Right? Following him. Look it up in the dictionary, and it's very simple. It's not rocket science. Of having literature, newspaper, books, DVDs, whatever, available, accessible, anytime on the call. On the call. Like somebody should call and say, oh, I need 50 Circle 7s right now. And they should be able to. Or say, you know what? I got 10 and I'm going to call these other Moors so you can get the other rest of them. Right? And that's like practical, like right now, that can go on. Because everybody has DVDs, everybody's trying to make a money off of this. Like, you don't make money off of liberation. How are you going to live off of your liberation?
Like, the bit of relevance, like superheroes. They have to do like
they got jobs and things.
Exactly. Peter Parker by day, Spider-Man by night, and Spider-Man don't want nothing. He captures the bad guy, $1 million bag. He wrapped that up with them and leave everything and gone. So, as you hear liberation, that's what it is. And that's also to address when you do come into the knowledge, you gotta obviously still learn how to operate outside in this democracy.
Yeah, because democracy is out here, and they're they just had the summit saying Cuba, you can't come because you're not a democracy.
Yeah.
That's how serious they're pushing democracy right now. The agenda is democracy right now. Dismantle republics, Treaty of Verona, all over again. Just because the minority is a formidable enemy because he is bound to the continent by heritage. Bound to the continent by heritage.
And in all their wars, then they call the whoever they're warring against the dictator. But they always say that country is a republic. And they're trying to bring democracy to that.
Right.
And oust their dictator.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even, how can you be a republic and have a dictator?
Have a dictator. Right? And also too, that's the story to tell the dumb public over here. Like they're making the argument that this is the democracy. You can't do
You have the Soldier's Handbook here?
The King Alfred?
No, the Soldier's Handbook where they read, where people need to read that Soldier's Handbook where the outcome of a republic, what a republic is, what are the outcomes of a republic for you because when you're explaining how when they're out there, the soldiers are out there going into these countries to bring the republic or to bring democracy to them. The soldiers know what's going on, like what level they're on, like what they're trying to accomplish there. And when you read that, you'll see like what it says, like this is the republic, and these are all the outcomes of the Islamic Republic government, how the people feel, and blah blah blah. And it's all positive. And you read the outcome of the democracy, and it's like that's where you get like all these people under pressure, the stresses, like it's just all negative.
Right now,
it's in the soldier's handbook.
Right now on the news, they have this guy, what was it, Alan West, blazing down Obama and the Democratic Party. So like, and they're saying some of the stuff too, like they're not going as far as extreme, but they're saying like the Democratic Party and how they're unconstitutional. Right? But then the argument back to them is like some Democratic are saying, but you're the Tea Party. So both of them are like, both of them are fraud, and they're both arguing each other on who's the lesser fraud. Who's king fraud.
And like people aren't catching the play.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like public.
And then in the same with Alan West, he keeps on saying, well, yeah, everything's going to be within the corporation of the United States. Every time. Every time. I'm like, what's wrong with us? Yeah. And they put him there. He's a brother, too, bashing Barack the whole time. So it's kind of like,
they're doing
justifies it.
They're doing their plot.
Charade.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And sometimes they have people, the quote unquote blacks, trying to make them this pro-democratic people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so it's like, I'm always reminded of this Ice Cube lyric. He said, blacks are too broke to be Republican. That's what Ice Cube said. So I was like, it's just, it just makes your mind be like, well, what is going on?
And that goes back
Republican.
Goes back to the Reconstruction.
Yeah.
Telling all the so-called freed slaves that in order to be free they have to vote Republican, and then all of the so-called Caucasians, Euro men got to vote. If they want to keep their houses in the land, then they have to vote Democratic.
No, the whites vote Republican.
No, they had to vote Republican. Yeah, but the so-called the Negroes had to vote Democratic.
Yeah, to get them out of the Republic position.
Yeah. So that's what it is right now. Like in the U.S. voting system, Democratic Party is looked at as the Black Party.
Exactly.
And then that just became the norm.
Mentality, just that.
You just automatically vote Democratic.
Democratic. That's why Obama is the Democratic leader.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. Everything is just lacing Obama with unconstitutional power.
Yes.
And the whole Democratic Party. And he's confident when he's saying
he's talking like,
wow!
You better watch, you better check King Alfred plan. Minority will be unseated at once.
Yeah, he's military, he's a colonel.
Because, like you talk about it, there's people in positions who, are coming into information. Like they could be in any, like all kinds of positions. Who just snapped, who know already, but who just snapped and say, no, forget this. I'm not down for this plan anymore. Like I want the Republic back.
That's the thing.
Like, I'm not raising my children in this madness.
Well, North Carolina, the state is doing no stuff like that.
That's the thing too, because even when the president-elect of the U.S. is Republican. Even when the Republican Party wins, they still democracy.
Yeah. Well, that's just again, and that comes back to the whole
Like, wait,
bar association.
Republic now. Like, Republicans won.
They're still out there pushing democracy.
Democracy.
And that's the whole fraud with the Republican and Democratic under the umbrella of the democracy.
The name of their party is the Democratic Party.
The U.S. corporation will always be a democracy.
Yeah, exactly. It can't be anything else. Just like Canada. It can't be anything else.
Democracy.
All it could be is but you know, and nothing's wrong with that. If you're gonna be that, be that. Do your thing. That's your corporation.
You see that people mistake that now with the actual land.
Right.
And the governing of the people.
Right. Exactly. Right. For all the constitutional Canada people.
And then and then like we found out, they think that if they make a violation and they see crown on the paper, that it's like
it's really the queen.
So, oh man, I wronged her. Okay, my bad. Let me pay this. and then there's that feeling of distance. Like, okay, I can't fight the queen, obviously. So why should why should I fight this?
This is Regina,
the queen. She'll
stop right out of Canada.
You know what I mean? She has all these jewels and all this power, but it's a corporation in London that is that word crown.
And proof of
and even probably all those other Regina and all those words. But those words.
Constitution Act of Canada, 1982, Section 32. This charter applies, A, to the Parliament and Government of Canada in respect of all matters within the authority of Parliament, including all matters relating to the Yukon Territory and Northwestern Territories, and B, to the legislatures and governments of each province in respect of all matters within the authority of the legislator of each province. So where does it say that this charter applies to the Canadian people? In the same Charter of Rights and the same Constitution Act that they're pushing in school, that this is the Constitution Act of Canada, you have your rights here, and every school's gonna have the plaque, with the rights on it. When it only applies to Parliament, Government of Canada, legislatures, and the governments of each province.
Okay, so what was established in 64 or something?
67?
67.
The BNA Act.
The BNA Act.
The British North America Act.
That has a constitution.
That they were saying that that's the constitution.
That's what they try to say.
Yeah. And then they made that into the Canadian Constitution Act.
That's why you come.
So, but when
in 1982, but before that it was the BNA Act they were using the whole time.
Right, but then
100 years, yo.
Right. But then when people ask them when is the origin of the Constitution, Canada, they like to say the BNA Act. Generally,
it seems far away. Oh, okay, we're legit. We've been here.
We've been here since
this proper BNA Act, which is only even 67. That's not even a long time. But you say 1982. Whoa, what? 1982? I was living in a colony. I was living in a freaking colony.
I was already born and then.
I was a colonized piece of chattel. It's not even a chattel in a regular country. That's how they do us. Chattel in a colony, yo. Just a colony.
That's how they do us in Canada. Made a colony out of it.
So,
that's what I tell people.
What is the website link for? You were speaking on Canada being questioned on what is it? Country.
For the that was the Fidel Castro.
24,
Fidel Castro speech.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
It was a letter. Some letter that he wrote. Castro raised concerns over Canada's membership in the organization, and it's not clear whether Canada close it out. We're going again tomorrow, live again. We'll see what's in the news tonight, and yo, tomorrow.
It's fire, like if you're
I'm
not,
seated right now.
yeah, you miss a week,
Right now.
you miss a day, like yo,
Yeah.
you miss up every day
Right.
something.
And again, we're not wanting, like
Questionable.
we're not literally like we don't sit there and watch the news.
No, all you need to do
It
is
just
just
pops up,
Yo, it just pops up right when
You know what I
you
mean?
put it on.
that's it. That's all you need.
Get it.
and know yourself,
So-
you know what's going on.
It doesn't take a long time.
When I read the 24th with that Castro,
Yeah.
last week I was riding the bus. There's newspapers all around.
Everywhere.
You know what I'm supposed to do? With the federal here, the 24 here, and I'm just like this. I'm like, I have my headphones on. I'm just Castro Snapchat. Oh, okay. I started reading. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm just getting lit up.
Getting lit up on the bus. And then somebody's texting somebody laughing at themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What it is.
Reading the paper, the 2-4. What's in the 2-4? What's so funny?
But that's how much people are not reading. That
Yeah.
They are scared that their propaganda machine can't run, so they're putting out
Putting out true papers with real info in it.
real, to keep
Yeah.
people reading and stuff, because
First thing
people,
in the morning.
right,
Yeah.
people ain't reading.
Everybody's
Not
on their
reading their
iPod.
iPod in that,
Yeah.
Everybody's trapped in the other matrix now.
Mhm.
The brain matrix.
So what happens is the same, like, Jolly, I was listening to Taj, Taj is like, Jolly's the Dragon Slayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Easy to trust. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, man, and so then now, and then so Jolly says he's going to make the Europeans tell the truth, is like this, they're forced to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Now that
Because of what
Veil
he
is
did.
gone.
Yeah, what he did is catching up to them.
Catch it
now.
up.
right,
Catch it up fast.
fast,
Fast.
moving.
Yeah.
So the very thing that they were using as their tool can be the same thing used against them now.
Right. Yeah.
The same newspaper,
Exactly.
propaganda, and
There's lots of pressure.
Magna Carta, yeah.
Treaty of Verona and all that
All
stuff.
that stuff.
Used it against them
against them now.
after they tried to use it to
Right,
keep us subjugated.
right.
You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah.
Right. So with Trayvon Martin and stuff like that, like yeah. But notice how everybody's into case law now. Like people are actually studying the
Yeah.
structure of a case now.
Yeah.
And, okay, this person, though they're being duped,
Yeah.
they because they know that, oh shoot, these people are learning. Moors are teaching each other.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
control their
Like,
speed of
yeah,
their
yeah.
learning.
And
So
their
they're
learning, yeah.
teaching now.
Let's jump
They're
on.
teaching, trying to teach Moors.
Yeah.
They're trying to teach people at this slow rate.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're
And
learning.
obviously bypassing status.
Right, obviously.
Which is, and then that really that's the first class, because that's like, okay, what is law? Okay, what are the issues at law? First issue status, second issue jurisdiction, third issue like that should be first class, yo.
So true.
Right?
So true.
But they want to jump in and, well, just this state and that state, and like, what did the prosecutor's wife have for dinner? And like, you can only understand the relevance of that stuff after you pin down status, jurisdiction. Okay, then you can talk about what's gonna happen
What's
when
gonna happen.
Even if you're studying law and you're going through a case, then at the beginning, if you see plaintiff in error, that should be for you right there. Like,
Right.
what is this? Why was this guy in error? Like, as if you go through his whole case and say he won.
Yeah.
And then you look, he lost.
Exactly.
He's in error.
You know,
We have our own here and here, like Ephraim Brown and all of them, all the situations. All of them.
Yeah, and the
Saints, all of them.
brother online was like, was mentioning if we know any other cases like that. So there you go. But I was gonna say I'm gonna look into more and more.
Yeah, I mean, and
there's been 19 since.
Yeah, since Trayvon's one, there's been ones.
19 of them.
19 of them.
Right?
19 similar cases.
Right.
Since. So that's like what, in a month or whatever.
Yeah.
How much of those names we know?
None.
How much ashes did they get?
Yeah.
Because that Trayvon was strategically designed, it was set up to be blown up.
See, and that's the double-edged sword on them. Because they try to make it benefit them. Stuff like this judge having to go through this status hearing is the double-edged sword on them. It's revealing something.
Something has to reveal if you're gonna take so much. Yeah. Straight up. Yeah. You know what I mean? So Moors, you know how we do? We just, keep the fire burning on them. You know what I mean? Just keep all the studying, keep all the questions, you know what I mean? Keep taking the prophet serious more and more and more, because what prophet brought is no joke. And nobody doesn't have any jurisdiction over it. I don't care what they call themselves, what seals they have, whatever. It's yours.
Yeah.
All you have to do is proclaim it out of your mouth. Once you proclaim it out of your mouth, it's yours. Nobody can tell you anything. That's it. Can't hold it. Can't try to dupe you out of using your own thing. You know what I mean? That's why, like, with the brother that was asking the questions online, right? And that's a young brother. Like youth man, that's on it. Like a youth man's on it. Yeah, like on it, hard, right? Harder than people who should be on it. Just because, like, you know what I mean? It's just gravitating with him on that level. And it's only because he's young, and then Juali said, I'm here for the young and the unborn. You know what I mean? Everybody thought it was them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Everybody thought it was them. And it was really the youths. You know? That's who it's about getting this to. Get this to the youths. Once the youths get this, then right? And them getting it just like the drug dealer. You're not just gonna here. No, like here's the 7, read that. There's one questionnaire, read that. Get some dictionaries and go study and stuff. Stop playing stupid video games that you're beating up every day. You're winning in the game. Like you're winning. Okay, you won 50 times. How much times are you going to NBA championship? You know what I mean?
Unlimited bullets and
like unlimited bullets.
Continue.
Yo. Right?
Talk to them.
Yeah, man, they know it's good. Yeah.
Inside them.
For sure.
Inside.
Yeah, they need something to talk about believing.
Say Catholic. That's the youth man we're talking about.
That's what my nephew.
Yeah. Bringing fire, yo. I was like, who is this person asking these questions? So it's long, brother.
Yeah, great. And that's and even on a higher level, like him putting his dad on, like those are anomalies. You know what I mean? It's like Abdullah Talasi, like dad and son on it together, like studying or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, if we get it there, then most definitely the Dragon Slayer is going to be swinging some heavy around.
And that's the answer. A lot of people are like, well, where's our this and
where's our
that? And well, then with like people like I understand where people are coming from to an extent, but
They're
the
looking in the
whole
wrong
time,
direction.
yeah, the whole time it's being said in their ears. The whole time it's being talked about. We're dealing with it, but they're looking for something else.
Yeah.
As instead of just paying attention to what's needed, they actually have a preconceived what they should be looking for.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And that's also part of what when they teach the propaganda. They're telling you that it should come like this and it should come like that. And like I listened to Farrakhan's Savior's Day speech. A lot of it was good, but you can tell no matter how nice he said it, the underlining context of where it was coming from was just straight corporate. Yeah, just straight keep the corporate machine going. Even though it's saying stuff that's disagreeing, just like Democrats disagree with Republicans, it's not really doing anything. I hear Democrats say worse about their own government, and Republicans say worse about their own government than Farrakhan is saying. So people are like, yeah, he's burning them out, he's exposing them. No.
It's not exposing them.
He's not.
And let's just say we're gonna call Moors Africans for right now, right? Just in context, so people can understand the severity of agents that are around us or whatever. That might call themselves something, and then not call themselves it anymore, but still let you call yourself it because you're not smart enough to get out from behind the leader. You just want to be stuck behind this guy and let him lead you into the promised land of, even though there's walls of hypocrisy that he's smashing you through, and you're the one you're in the front, being the battering ram for the wall of hypocrisy that he's using to get through, right? We're reading about this in Cartagena, right? In its last major change of hands, Cartagena and its surrounding territories were fought for and taken by Alfonso X.
Yeah, Cartagena in Andalusia.
Yeah. Right? Alfonso X.
But
okay? European dude. Alfonso X.
So kind of like when these Nation of Islam now want to drop their last name and say X, they haven't dropped anything.
Right.
Exchange for next year.
Alfonso X expressed his desire and expectation of expelling the Africans, quote-unquote Moors, from Spain with the help of God and the Virgin Mary.
His nickname is the African.
Alfonso X.
Yeah. He's a white dude.
The European.
Yeah, European dude. Yeah.
Right. But that's not propaganda.
Not like Maurice. Like there's a difference. Because at the same time you have Maurice, you just think, these are Moors.
Right.
He's Alfonso X. The African. Like Scipio. Africanus. Because Africa is even if you Google Rome, the first link that comes up that shows you that Rome is, Africa. Just type in Africa. The first link that comes up, it says Africa, the Roman province. First thing. First Wikipedia or whatever. Not even like a modern term of what they're calling Africa. They're saying that's not even the first definition. Even on
yeah, man. So now we talk all night. We close it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
I say Islam to all the Moors online. Islam to all the Moors that's just doing what you do. Stay active, Moors. You know how it goes.
Islam. Alright, so 5 on the left, 2 on the right as we do. Feet and arms at a 45-degree angle. Allah, Father of the universe,
Father of the universe,
Mother and Father of love,
Mother and Father of love,
truth,
truth,
peace,
peace,
freedom,
freedom,
and justice.
and justice.
Allah is our protector,
Allah is our protector,
our guide,
our guide,
and our salvation.
and our salvation.
By night
By night
and by day,
and by day,
through his and our holy prophet,
through his and our holy prophet,
through Ali.
through Ali.
Amen.
Amen.
Ameen.
Amin.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Hotep.
Hotep.
Islam.
Islam. Yes.
Class. Islam, Moors.
It's okay.
Yeah, she's gonna come.
Yes.
Um,